how far is the demand of minority rights connected with the demands for transformation, democratization of the political regime that exists in the Han majority in the coastal areas? And the second is about Russia. How far is the Orthodox Church has been rooted in the Russian society? How far this conservative movement is using kind of rhetoric connection with the Orthodox Church, but is not really Orthodox, or is really Orthodox, is meaning that there is a real renaissance of the Orthodox Church in Russia.
Hi, I just want to comment on Elena's presentation. I do not find it atypical that societies that goes through transition, like South Africa has also been through transition, the new forms of identities emerge. I had expected you to have spoken about new sense of identity. It seems that the church is asserting itself post-communism. I just thought I would make that point. But Prof. Vivek, I think the issue that you missed out is that what we call the struggle between China and India in terms of hegemony, in terms of economic hegemony over Africa, and as to how diasporic communities, especially in South Africa, has become catalysts to graft the economic interests of India, also in Kenya as well. So I had expected you to kind of focus on that. Failure, I think privatization is a major issue. If you're talking about law, international law, if you're talking about ILO, International Labour Organization, how do we regulate these private sectors? Some of the multinationals, British Water, Vivendi, Bywater, etc., are bigger than nation states. They can buy over Lesotho, Botswana, etc. in Africa. Is there a possibility to look at some form of regulatory framework through the what you call legal issues that you're talking about, through what you call international agencies to regulate these private sectors? Because nation states cannot regulate these private enterprises.
I think we should apply what order we do, the reverse order, then you start this, we'll go backwards,
Well, I think this is a tough question actually, because on one hand, the state nations had difficulties to regulate the private enterprises, and that includes obviously courts, right? On the other hand, we don't have any, or we have few arenas, international arenas in which we can use the law and get compliance after the ruling. So one thing that we have even discussed in this project is what we call the legal capacity of the countries to actually mobilize these international arenas. So for example, we look at the role that Brazilian lawyers and also Indian lawyers are playing before the WTO with respect to how do you call it, the intellectual property rights, right? To enable further development, by removing some legal issues that can be raised against the government action. So that would be one of the examples. And the other, in the case of Brazil, and I think in the case of we're not talking here about Europe, but we have these international human rights systems that can be also mobilized. The Inter-American Court of Human Rights or the European courts for human rights. So those can be other arenas that can be, through which social change and control of private enterprise can be pursued legally. But they are still scarce.
Just one thing, we have to leave this room at about 4 o'clock, exactly 4 o'clock. So, because we have another session, so I'll ask everybody to see.
Okay, thank you, Tom. On that, I mean, firstly, there's no doubt, that we are in a serious economic crisis, as I pointed out. Some of these developmental and industrial and financial policies are really very good. I mean, our country is known for very good policies. I mean, starting from our constitution and so on. So coming from the RDP, the Redistribution and Development Program, ASGISA, NETLAT that you've been referring to, and also the NDP, the National Development Plan, is a new one. There's a planning commission in the presidency. There's also provincial planning commissions. So that are very good, and they're really looking good on paper. If I can just quickly add, also coming from the Mineral Acts is a social and a labor plan, which requires from mining companies to get economic development in the areas where they operate. But now the mining industry is in a crisis as well. So one of the big problems is really the gap between policy and practice. And then quickly, except for the economic crisis, there's also other things linking onto labor issues. I was referring to the Marikana slaughter a year ago. There's also political issues which I referred to in my talk, like self-enrichment, corruption, and that kind of things, capacity problems. And then on the sideline, you can also throw into the melting pot, you can throw things like land reform issues that are coming up, the question of nationalization, also the national elections next year, and the crime statistics, national crime statistics were released last week, and about every crime has risen. So it is a very complex picture. So I'm afraid I'm not really giving you a brighter picture. So the policies are very good, but really the implementation is a problem due to, I think, the interwovenness of other factors.
I think we need to understand the issues of what is the complexity that is developing in Indian context. One is that Indian population is considered to be one of the problems. Now, I am saying considered to be because the distribution of resources is not being taken place enough. Though the planning, and therefore there is a gap between the planning and action. That is, action and intentions and actions are not matching. That is one. Secondly, unemployment and underemployment is growing. As a result, one finds that the informalization of even the present day workforce, which is heavy, is also developing much more. On the other hand, consumerism is developing. That is basically the middle class is growing, urbanization is taking place. In fact, one of the reports has been that almost 56% of India is almost urban, according to World Bank. But whereas the government of India talks about it is only 31% of India is becoming urban today. Now, this kind of developments which are there, plus the government at present is trying to talk about the kind of a populist measures. For example, certain ideas have been good enough. Right, for example, right to food, right to education, right to employment, right to the Manrega. 100 days of employment is guaranteed. What happens to the other 265 days? Now that is not talked about, though it is considered as one of the major populist program of the. Now, therefore, on one hand, people have been given the right to work, right to education, right to food, but this has been, how do you implement it? Because there is a major problem which is there, and therefore there is a crisis which is developing in a major sense. Apart from that, India is also one of the geo-economic and politically important kind of a center, and therefore when it comes to marine kind of a route or these issues of kind of important geo-economics importance or geopolitics important. That is becoming another major kind of a problem, which has not been able to resolve at the moment. And these are some of the things which are creating more problem for Indian policy or Indian problem development inside. Apart from that, there are different multinational corporations which are eyeing for this Indian kind of a free market called FDI and other things which are being talked about, which is being encouraged. But at the same time, the local situation is not kind of favoring these issues. Though in the time of elections now we have elections next year, there is likely to be some kind of a turmoil on these issues as well. I think we need to probe into the much more in detail on these accounts.
Thank you for your questions. Well, it is a difficult question to answer, but what I would say that there is not enough research on this issue. But actually, Orthodox Church becomes an important political actor, and it works together with the Russian state. And though by law, of course, we have secular state, but the boundary between secular and non-secular is blurred already. And I think it is important, of course, this identity crisis makes a huge demand for the moral values, and also the Orthodox Church capitalized on the repression of priesthood in the Soviet times. And it tries to work now together with the state in the same way, it is a metaphor, as the Communist Party ideology worked in the Soviet Union. And you know, people who studied Soviet society claimed that the Communist Party ideology of communism was a substitute for religious beliefs, in a way, for the people. But nowadays, but secular format. But nowadays, you see that our Orthodox Church learned from the communists how to function partly as ideological state apparatus, building up their alliance with the state. And of course, it is very important that it is Orthodox Christianity